start the meeting at 12:04 for today, September 22nd, 2020. Bob, do you have
I was back on.
Hey.
All right, you want me to mute all?
Yeah, mute all.
Darlene, you're going to have to unmute.
I know, I did. Bob, do you have anything for concessions for Friday and Saturday this week?
I get unmuted here.
Okay.
We totaled out $1,900 for the 2 days, which was good. I think Friday we got a monsoon, got shut down an hour early. And then Sunday we didn't have the credit card machine working, so we probably could have made 2,000 or so. So 1,900 is good. We're still, even with those two added in, we're still averaging over $1,200 each day at Safeway. So that's pretty good. Right now we've taken in $23,000 in sales at Safeway and grocery outlet at one time. So I'm pretty happy about that. From here on out, it's going to kind of depend on the weather and how cold it gets, how long we can go, and if our sales hold around 1,000, I think we can probably go through about maybe 3 weeks longer or so. We'll see what happens. We'll just have to try it and see how far it goes, see how good it is. If it isn't good enough, then we'll just have to bag it. We don't want people getting sick. So, Lloyd needs people for this Friday and Saturday again, so if you're available, don't hesitate to text Lloyd or call him on his cell phone and make arrangements to help us out. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Greg Firth, do you have anything for membership? Unmute.
Nothing on membership itself. I'll talk about membership dues after our program today.
Okay. Cam Potero, do you have anything for on zone chair?
Yeah, we just had a couple of great meetings, especially last night. We met with the Wakayakum Club. They're really doing terrific things and really getting their name out in the community. We had a great turnout from Pioneer Lions at the meeting last night. It was the governor's meeting for Wakayakum. We had Cindy and her dad, Louie, with us. Marilyn and her dad, Steve. Greg Firth was even with us. And Kathy Crawford gave a great talk and had some good question and answers down there. So far we've got 3 of our governor's visits done, with 4 of them left to go. One of those we still haven't heard from would be the Peninsula Club, but we're trying to find out what's going on down there. If any of you have the opportunity to join us, join in. It counts as a visitation if there's 2 or more of you. And you find out some interesting things about what's going on with the rest of the clubs in the zone. Other than that, we're having a great time from sunny Las Vegas, and that's our report.
Okay.
Cindy has her hand up.
Okay, Cindy?
Along with that, with visitations, there's one tonight I sent out with the Zoom for everybody today. There's 3 items underneath there that we're discussing, and one of them is the visitations with Battleground, and the numbers are there if you'd like to visit tonight. That does count for visitations for our club.
Okay.
Hey, Cindy,
Yes.
one real quick question while I still have off of mute. That email you sent out to us about the dues.
We're going to talk about that later.
We're gonna
Never mind. Lonnie just told me to shut up. We're going to talk about it.
we'll talk about that at the end. So.
All right.
He did say he would mention that later after the speaker.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing I have on Sunshine Report is that Dolly's still having some issues with her neck. They're going to try to get an MRI scheduled for it, but she's in a lot of pain and she's on a lot of drugs. So, keep her in your thoughts. I talked to her yesterday and everything's hurting. Hal? Unmute.
There it is. My brother is in the hospital. He's been there since Sunday night. He's been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, and his blood is too thick to do any of the things they want to do for him. So he's just sitting there in a $3,000 a day bed without health insurance. Yeah.
Hey. Okay, any happy or sad bucks today? We'll do a few minutes and then we'll do some more at the end if we have time. Sharon?
I have a sad buck. I have a mama kitty. She has kitties, 5 kitties, and they're about 4 weeks old. And my mommy cat died a couple days ago.
Oh no.
We don't know if, I think she might have got into something, I'm not exactly sure. So that's so now I got 5 kitties. And I actually gotten them all to where they eat and stuff. So if you know anyone that wants a kitty, they're 4 weeks old and they're gonna need some extra loving, but I'm willing to let them go.
Phil? Unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is a commercial for some Verizon or something. Anyway, I would like to know if anybody has a son or grandson that I could hire for a day for some handyman work around our place. So if anybody does, please call me or send me an email or get in touch with me. It's a paid position.
Okay. Anybody else? All right.
I talked with Mark Couch.
Yeah.
He's having trouble with his feet. He can't, he's kind of working, but he can't get around to it very good.
Oh. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to turn this over to George Rader to introduce our guest speaker for today.
Thank you, President Darlene. It is a pleasure to be your program chair and to introduce our speaker. As you everyone obviously already knows him. I've been chatting with him before I got on. Terry McLaughlin. Terry is a native of Cowles County. He lived his entire life here so far. He's had a varied history of employment, which I always enjoy looking at. He's been a telephone installer with the telephone company. He's been a Gandhi dancer with the railroad. He's worked at the U.S. Post Office. He went to work for the county in the elections department. He's worked in mapping. He's worked for the assessor system. He was a manager of GIS when I was there as commissioner and was later became the county assessor, where he spent several terms after retiring in 2018, total time with the county of 28 years. His topic today is El Camino de Santiago, which is Spanish for El Camino de Santiago.
Okay.
This time, please give a nice welcome to our speaker, Terry McLaughlin.
Thank you. I think I'm turned on. So I'll go ahead and see if I can share the screen. And if that works, share. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Camino de Santiago, what that literally means is the way of St. James. And it's a pilgrimage, and probably about 30 years ago, I first heard of pilgrimages with pilgrimages to Mecca and Peru and stuff. And I thought I'd like to do a pilgrimage someday. Well, it turned out I started seeing this one and thought it'd be interesting. So that jumped on my bucket list real quick. So I finally got to do it after retirement, but I made attempts prior to that, just never could make it happen. A little bit of background on who we're talking about here. Let's see if that, there we go. Okay. So St. James was, of course, one of the apostles of Jesus, and he was, Jesus had appointed everybody to go out and spread the word somewhere, and he assigned the Iberian Peninsula to James. So James came to the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal, and was a bit of a failure there. He had 7 converts when he went back to the Holy Land, and immediately was beheaded by King Herod. So they put him on a boat. He floated out to sea, and he landed right up here. If you can see the mouse at all, near Santiago, actually in the water there. So a couple of his disciples found him, moved him up on the hillside and buried him. About 800 years later, they found his, he'd totally been forgotten about, and then they found him about 800 years later and have since built a cathedral on top of where they found him. At the time, Spain was pretty much being taken over from the Moors coming up from Morocco. And so what happened was pilgrimages started coming towards Santiago in order to help hold the Iberian Peninsula into a Christian hold. So what you see here is all kinds of caminos or ways that people have walked from Italy and Switzerland and everywhere around Europe, converging on St. Jean, which is where we started our walk. So to give you an idea of the size, the distance of our walk, I imposed Washington State over the top of Spain there. So we started in St. Jean, through Pamplona, Logroño, Burgos, on through León, and all the way up here, Sarria here, all the way to Santiago. So our walk was in essence like walking from basically northern Idaho to, say, Vancouver, BC. One of the things, I showed that first picture. It showed 790 kilometers to Santiago. And a lot of people, everybody that walks this, they take that picture and everybody feels it's 790 kilometers to Santiago. What you don't realize is that in order to get to that, you have to walk over the Pyrenees. So you've already started in France, walked over from St. Jean over the Pyrenees. Yeah, we ended up in some snow going over it. And then coming down into, in essence, a town, Roncesvalles, where you have that street sign of Santiago de Compestela, 790 kilometers. There's 2 routes going over the Pyrenees. One stays on the lowlands, which was a former route, but in about probably in the Middle Ages, 1500, they started a route up over the top of the Pyrenees because there was so much robbery and bandits that the pilgrims were being robbed all the time, so they took a more difficult route going over the top. They call this route the Napoleon route. The reason being, it's also a route that Napoleon's army had taken when they went from, when they were coming into Spain from France. So it's right away you're immersed in history as you start your walk. I want to talk a little bit about the accommodations there. You can see the beds and stuff. You have all kinds of selections for accommodation. You can stay in monasteries, convents. You've got your albergues, which you see in a lot of pictures of here. That's an old school there. Hotels. So there are all kinds of accommodations. We generally stayed in albergues, which would be either private or municipal. The municipal ones generally costed only about €8 a bed. So with my wife and I going, it would be about 16 to 20 bucks. Euros. Oftentimes, though, you could get a room for about 25 euros, so we would go and get a room since we were spending that much anyway. But a lot of people on the trail, not a lot, but a fair amount, they would go with no money. There were people that were camping there, more or less looking for help for food and everything. So it's, some people use tours, so you can go in any luxury you want going on the Camino. In this case, in this picture here, and I've heard about it a lot, but only seen it here, where someone literally is sleeping on the steps of a church there. So sometimes you don't find a room because it's so busy. With COVID, things have changed. In the old days, old days like last year when I went, because I went in June of last year, they would give you sheets, you would make your bed, they would give you blankets to stay warm and stuff. Now they don't give you blankets. They give you disposable sheets. They expect when you use the shower or use the bathroom that you gotta sanitize behind yourself. So things have changed already since COVID, and for several months, there was nobody even walking because of COVID. Likewise, there's no scenes like this. A lot of the food was done in a communal eating like this. This is all the people that were staying at the albergue one evening, and then they would serve food pretty much together, packed real tight. People from all around the world, and now the kitchens are closed. They're not serving food, and the challenge to that is in Spain, they still really honor siestas. So when you first get into town, we would walk about 25 kilometers a day. So when we would get into town, it's usually about 1 to 1:30. Everything's closed. And they aren't going to open back up till 5 or 6 o'clock. So it was really a challenge to get there early enough to eat, or wait forever to get to eat, or even to get to check into your room, because again, with the siesta, all through Spain, through the north, things were pretty much closed, even the big cities, and that at siesta time. The trails were really varied. We've got, as you can see, there's a granite trail right there. There were several, and when it's wet, those were pretty tough. But the majority of it is on kind of a path that is pretty much like you see right there. It's not really, it's just a path, maybe a farm road or something like that. You'd have some blacktop and cement, but only about 10-15% of your walk would be that. Now, during your walk, you're allowed not to have a mask if you're out in the countryside, unless there was a group around you. If you went into town without a mask on, and I've heard from several pilgrims out this year that they have been fined €100 because they don't have a mask when they come into town. So in Spain, even the people that are on the pilgrimage now have to have themselves with a mask, and anytime they're around town without it, they're going to be in trouble. So I think it makes it pretty tough on the pilgrimage, because when you're walking, it's pretty grueling sometimes, and having the mask on it's suffocating, frankly. So one of the things that I had committed to doing was going to a Pilgrims Mass every night. And so starting in St. Jean, we went to a Pilgrims Mass. They say a prayer for the pilgrim. They give you a little prayer card and a blessing and send you off. And oftentimes there'd be a lot of people at the Pilgrim Mass. Sometimes there'd be very few. Well, the first 4 days I found a Pilgrim Mass, and the 5th day I was able to get people to come to Mass. I said, we got to do this. Let's go to Pilgrim Mass. And we were having trouble finding one. Finally, we found where the Pilgrim Mass was. And the people that went with me, we went into the church, and it was amazing that there were several hundred people there, and we could not believe the church was just packed. Well, it turned out we were at a funeral. So it was hard finding the Pilgrim Masses, and it was much more of a challenge after that, when I realized I couldn't talk anyone else into coming with me, because they didn't really know if it was a Mass or a funeral even, because it turned out this funeral, they ended up in the next town having a funeral for the person too, because he was pretty prominent in that province. This church here that I stopped for a picture of is, these are Gregorian monks that are given chants, and so the whole Pilgrim Mass was done with Gregorian chant in a very rusty old church, as you can see here. One of the towns that resonated with me here was Castro Harris, and the reason that it did is Castro Harris, even when I was there, I thought, this is a very interesting old town. It just doesn't look real healthy. We ended up staying, but it was very run down. And so things for sale, the buildings you'll see are kind of falling apart. And I think Shirley MacLaine even mentioned that this area on the Camino, which is in the middle of the Meseta, has like what she called it was a thin veil between the universe and heaven in this area. Well, it turns out that Castro Harris is set on uniquely positioned on a knoll here in the Meseta. So for over 1,000 years, the Romans have taken this area to be able to protect the roads before going into Galicia for gold, so that nobody can come by and steal the gold. And then it was used, the Moors came and took it over a certain time frame as part of their warring faction. And then what I read literally in a history book, and I was surprised to see it, says basically this town's decline began when it picked the losing side in the war in the 1500s. And I thought, here we are in a town that I thought looked a little depressed economically. And this depression started, well, 400 or 500 years ago because of being on the losing side of the war. And I just really struggled with wrapping my head around that. But really neat town, really enjoyed it. One of the things too, this is a military zone in this area. Walking up in the hills, this here is Monte De Orca. And when we ran across this area right here, I didn't really know what it was. Again, investigating later, I discovered this area here was also an area, like I mentioned about with the Pyrenees earlier, where bandits would hide in the woods and they would rob from you. And so in the 15th, 16th century, the pilgrims really had to be protected to get through a lot of these areas. Well, this tribute here is in Franco's day. So in the 30s, in the 1930s, Franco was, during the Civil War, he was going down into the towns and kidnapping people and killing them up here and just leaving them. And for a couple of months, every day they would find a couple dozen bodies up in this area heap that had been kidnapped the night before and left to be killed. So sorry for the bleakness, but that's part of what you find on this trail. And this memorial, and it's on both sides of the trail here, it goes on for about a half a mile, is all attributed to the Civil War under Franco. One of the routines or that people do when they go on the Camino is, this is Cruz de Ferro here. When you pick up a stone from home, you carry it with you through the Camino. This is probably about 600 kilometers into the Camino, so you've carried it quite a ways already. And it's to release, to beg forgiveness for sins, to release a burden that you have. It turns out the rock that I carried, what I didn't mention earlier is I had originally planned, and I made reservations for hotels. I had purchased my tickets to go on this Camino in 2016. I was scheduled to go in early April, and then in late February I got in a vehicle accident, so I wasn't able to go. I totaled my truck on a head-on collision. So because of that, I had to delay 3 years. So what I did was I picked up a rock from that collision and I carried it with me up to here to unleash that burden from me. And again, you can see a lot of people have dropped off their rocks here. It's really a pretty tear-filled area when you look at this, and you see a lot of people bringing jerseys from a loved one that they're leaving up here. And we saw one guy, and I don't know how it happened, but we walked by a pilgrim one day, and just a big burly guy, and he had this little teddy bear and a little pair of shoes tied to the back of his Camino. My wife and I looked at each other after he passed us and just started crying, thinking, I don't know what he's feeling, but it's gotta hurt. And we saw him when he was up here, and I could tell he was definitely unleashing a burden at Cruz de Ferro. Just a picture of some of the people you meet on the path. And why I share this is it turns out that pretty much everybody here has their story and their burdens. In this case, we've got this girl here is from Australia. She's fresh out of high school, trying to figure what she wanted to do with her life. And we ran into her. I think she was taking bus some because she'd fall way behind and we'd catch her ahead of us. And so she at least made it through the Camino. This girl here from California, she decided, I don't want to go through the Meseta because the Meseta is a pretty long, boring, flat area in farmland, which I actually loved it. But for her, she decided to take a bike, ended up crashing, crushed her ankle, had to take a bus up, and was able to walk about the last 4 days into Santiago. Lloyd here, he just one day disappeared. And so I finally contacted him. I finally found him about 2 months ago. I says, what happened? He says, I really regret the worst thing I ever did was hop that bus in Logroño about 5 days in and went all the way to Santiago. I didn't finish the walk. I got nervous about leaving my job and thought I better get back home because he had quit his job in order to do the Camino. And then Tanya here, she had just left her husband. She told her kids, I gotta go. I'm gonna go on a walk. And about 2 days after this, her knees started bothering her. About 5 days later, she finally told Denise and I, my wife and I, she says, you know, I think the message from God is you can't run away from this. I can barely even move with my knees, so I've got to go home. So a lot of people that go out on the Camino don't finish it. They're out there to you know, for basically a self-discovery, and they struggle with making it. Some of you may recognize a face or two in here. This, when I was in Saria, which is about 100 kilometers from the end of the walk, I was sitting on the street there having lunch, and Joe Hobson walks by. Joe from Longview. He says, yeah. And he recognized me. What are you doing here? I had no idea he was on this walk, but I ran into him on the Camino there in Spain. And this here, one day we were staying at an albergue, and my wife says, there's someone from Kelso here. I says, really? So this girl is Shelley Pankratz. So I went and talked to her. I says, I know the family. I said, Darlene DeRosier hired me actually at the county. She says, yeah, that's my aunt. So we ended up running into her aunt. We ran into her quite a bit. So this is a picture of us with her in Santiago when we completed our walk. I want to talk about some of the statistics because generally every year for the last, say, 15 years, the Camino has gotten more and more popular. Last year, we went in June, finished it in June. And when you walk on the Camino, you have a passport that you stamp at your hotel every night. When you do your last 100 kilometers, you have to get 2 stamps. And the reason for that is many people, and in fact, most of the people start in Saria to get a Compostela or a completion of the Camino from the cathedral. So here's what happens. This picture is indicative of once you get past Saria, there's how busy that trail gets. It gets pretty busy. Well, last year we had, for August, the statistics, 55,000 people completed the Camino last August. And of that, 1,200 of them were from the United States. This year, in August, 20,000 completed, and only 84 of them were from the United States. Now, frankly, we can't even get into Spain right now. So I know a couple of the people that have been on the trail this year, it's because they have a family member or a resident somewhere outside of the country that they first started there. They could show that they had a residency there and then were able to go in to Spain to do the Camino. But we still can't do the Camino due to COVID. And so I was looking at statistics further. Interestingly, again, we went May and June in 2019 last year. Well, you guys can probably predict for April, May, and June, there were 0 people that walked the Camino. So from growing pretty exponential to the point that there were 50,000 people the month that I went there, there were 0 the next year. So you can see that it's really affected the economics along this trail for all the little towns that count on people coming, the pilgrims coming through. Getting into Santiago, one of the things that really impressed me was, after looking at all these other churches that I looked at, Santiago almost seemed anticlimactic. It was a nice big church, but it didn't seem like great. It probably didn't help they were remodeling it. So when we got inside, there wasn't a lot we could see. One of the routines when you do get to Santiago is to climb up. This is a marble stairwell, and you climb up to a statue of Santiago, and a lot of the pilgrims will come up and they'll hug his back and whisper in his ear or something, or beg a forgiveness, or pay a tribute. And I'm going to show a picture that I took online because it didn't look anything like this when I was there. This is the statue of Santiago, literally standing there. You would go up the stairwell, and it's about 6 feet from right here at his shoulder to about his chest. So that's how tall this is, because you walk up, look out this window to look out to the rest of the church. Unfortunately, when we were there, there's what it looked like. So this is the statue right down in here. They were doing some work. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see. One of the things they do is a routine where they swing what's called a beta fumoco, and it's a big incense burner right here. And the reason that they've done this is pilgrims for centuries have come to pay tribute and pray in the cathedral. Well, frankly, we stink at that point in time. So what's happened is they have done this burning of the incense for centuries, but it takes 6 men after they burn the incense to pull this beta fumoco on a long rope across the church like a pendulum. And it'll swing it's probably easily 200 feet that it'll swing across inside of that church, burning the incense out. And there's probably usually around 1,000, 1,500 people that are there to watch the swing of the beta fumoco. But, say we didn't get to see it because of where we were there during the construction. So this is it. This is the relics of St. James. The thing I wanted to really summarize here is you go out on the Camino, you spend every day walking about 25 kilometers at least. You're getting blisters, you're getting frustrated, you're getting lost, you're getting sore, you're having trouble finding beds oftentimes. You get frustrated. They get to Santiago and then here lie the remains of one of Jesus' apostles. Throughout the walk, there's always people that are like, do you really think he's there? Do you really believe this? Do you really think he is? Well, the reality is, while the contents of the tomb are questioned, whether or not they're the apostles' relics, this belief has motivated pilgrims actually for more than 1,000 years. Frankly, this is what I call faith. So I'd say that yeah, you do believe, but if nothing else, there's a lot of people going on this pilgrimage, and there were oftentimes during the walk with frustration, I would think, we at least are going on a path to a point, to a person that was a partner of Jesus's in essence. And it's pretty driving when you're out there and pretty impactful. So I'm going to turn it over now to see if anyone has questions, and I'm going to let this go through and we can just let this flash for more pictures if you want. I don't know if I need to mute or do anything here. Maybe I do need to. Do I need to give the screen back?
No, let him go.
No.
Okay.
So, anybody have any questions? Leroy?
Hey, Terry?
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. I myself I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and your pictures and your talk even make me want to go more. A question, what are the people like that live in the area? Do you get to meet anybody, or do you have much interaction with them?
Yes, you do. You're certainly going to have interaction with the people that are running the albergue and with the mercados, at the grocery stores and things like that. But there are times, I don't know if this, it's like I might have to, yeah, it's not flashing to the pictures, but I have some pictures in here where the people are great there. And I have one cute picture where there's this older lady talking to my wife. She's showing her Camino shell from when she walked, and it had been quite a few years since she walked, and she was just so happy to see pilgrims and be able to talk about it. And then we'd run into others that say, I would love to walk. I'm just way too busy, but yet they live on the Camino. So people that we've seen have been very friendly and very helpful. You have any questions?
Well, just a comment, Terry. It's Cal. What this reminds me of, I went to Paris and I went to Venice. I went to see St. Mark's. Unfortunately, when we were in Rome, we weren't able to see St. Peter's. But it sounds like the preservation of all these beautiful places is still going on, still going strong.
Yes, I would agree. Even like this picture right here, there's an old church that picture that just flashed past, that was an albergue. It was really a church, no power, thing was served by candlelight and stuff. So they do what they can to preserve, even though some things are really, it's a challenge.
Okay,
Yes.
Phil, unmute.
Terry, thank you very much. I find my own reaction to your presentation very interesting because I'm really moved by this. So it's something you bring to it, and it's also what's there. So thank you very much.
You bet. You're welcome. Thank you.
Terry, how many days did it take you to do the walk?
We started our walk on May 2nd and we finished June 3rd. So about 31, 32 days.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Sandy Cat. I don't know if you're picking up the video or not. But Terry, how did you and your wife train for this?
Several ways. One of the things is, number one, I was walking to work an awful lot. So I just plain do a lot of walking, typical city or flat walking. But going up over City View, there were several times I was on the hills that I said, thank you, City View. What I would do is I would go up over City View with my backpack loaded, and I would do it like 4 times in a row, up and down, up and down, up and down. And another thing we did is the last 2 years before we hiked here, we had done some bigger hikes out in the woods. We hiked around Mount Hood, and that was a 3-night out in Mount Hood, and then we hiked around Mount St. Helens, which was a 2-night camp. So we were carrying our tent, pitching tent, and living basically on what we had with us for a couple of days, just to get used to being out there, roughing it in essence.
How much did your backpack weigh, and how many pair of shoes did you go through?
I used Vask shoes, and they actually did pretty good. I think I have them right beside me here. Not sure if I can get to them. Nope. But I probably could still get another 100 miles off of these Vask shoes. They did pretty good. But a lot of people, they would break down. So it depends on the shoe that you're using. And so only one pair. But my pack weighed, we tried to keep it below 20 pounds. At the most, I was probably at 20. My wife's was probably about 16, 17 pounds. One of the things we did pack, we only packed a little silk sleeping sack, in essence. And next time we'd have to pack a sleeping bag because they aren't giving you blankets or anything anymore. So some of us packing real light. The towel I had was literally about a 1.5 foot square chamois type of cloth. So, you pack pretty light.
Dwayne? Dwayne, unmute.
Terry, I just wanted to let you know that we record your presentation and put it on YouTube and present it to KLTV.
Wow.
So more people will enjoy your presentation.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Darlene?
Yes, sir.
Terry, what was the food like on your trip when you were stopping at these places?
Well, the thing we liked the most was coffee con leche, believe it or not. The food wasn't as good on the Camino as I thought it would be. It wasn't bad, but usually you're just quite hungry and eat tons of pasta. So, you could eat all you wanted just because you were walking it all off. But we ate a lot of tortas, which was pretty much like a egg omelet type of thing. And the pilgrim menus generally were a bit like paellas, like on the left-hand side of that picture just there, which are pretty much a rice mixture. And it was very tolerable, but it wasn't anything I would brag about.
So tell me more about these Basque shoes. Are they made in Spain?
The what?
The Basque shoes you were talking about.
Basque.
No.
Yes.
The shoes that you wore.
Oh, Basque. Okay. Hold on just a sec. I don't know if you guys can see in the picture. These are literally the shoes I wore.
Oh.
And if you can see the wear on them, worn some, but they aren't worn all the way out. And that brand is Basque.
Okay.
And
I thought it was
what's that?
I thought it was a Spanish brand you got there.
Oh, you thought I said Basque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basque. It's a V. Yeah, yes, I could see why that is. Actually, the Basque food, it was good food. Early on, we went to Basque country, and that was very good food.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Oh, Marilyn?
Terry, you had a picture that showed a table with fruit baskets and snacks and whatnot, and I'm assuming that was on the path that was provided for you?
Yes. Yes.
Also the rocks and the little stacks. What's the significance of those rocks?
I really don't know the significance entirely of the rocks. It's a lot of, I think it's almost like prayer circle type of stuff where people would just leave a little. Sometimes people, I would see them stacking them, and other times I'd see one person stack and walk on them. So I couldn't tell you really the significance on the rocks. As far as the food on the trail, oftentimes, and I think I have 2 or 3 pictures of the trail angels or pilgrim angels, they would call them. And what people would do is out in the middle of nowhere where it may be a while before there's food in between, then they would have baskets out there just for you to be able to help yourself with some fruit or whatever. It was just food for you to pick up along the walk that people have volunteered to do that are residents, or some people, frankly, get along this trail and have trouble ever leaving it. I read it a little bit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weather like?
Weather pretty much like ours. They run about 5 degrees warmer than we do. So this is about the time of year I'd want to go is May to June. I wouldn't want to go in the summer. I could consider going in, say, mid-September through October timeframe too.
Okay.
And dress warm. Looks like.
Well, you can see we're dressed pretty warm right there, and we needed that sometimes.
I remember my mother and I walking the California version until you realize that most of the California version of the El Camino Real is freeways now.
Well, and a good point, Hal, because a lot of the road here, I would say that we really are walking probably only about 10-15% along trails that were the same trail in the medieval times. And you could kind of tell which ones through the pictures that were really rustic and rocky and granite. But as with many things, even the Oregon Trail here, those become our roads. And so a lot of the trails we walked was either moved because they had become highways, or they're a path right beside the highway. So we have run into that, realizing that, yeah, it isn't all just the exotic old medieval trail. There's a fair amount of it, but it isn't all that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, Terry, thank you for your presentation today at the Pioneer Alliance. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep, thanks a lot. Let's see if I can get myself off of here. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Greg Firth.
Okay. There's a question about our dues for the coming year. When we had our budget meeting, we were going over quite a few different things, one of which was, of course, the administrative budget. Our administrative account is not bad. Because we're not meeting physically, we're not spending very much money. The club can afford to drop the dues a bit because of this corona garbage that's going on. And we decided that instead of $100 a year dues, we would reduce that this year, this coming year, to $70. And for couples, $140. Now, that's if the dues are paid before December 15th. Dolly will be sending out dues notices early this year because of this. If you pay after December 15th, it's $100. If by chance you are in arrears on any of your dues, those plus the 70 have to be paid by December 15th, or you have the full amount. Are there any questions on this? Any at all?
Who do we get the money to?
Dolly, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
And those can be mailed to our Club P.O. Box 1102. There's one other thing I'd like to bring up. Cindy, in her email to all of us about the meeting, showed our budget that was put together, and it was approved by the board, what was it, last week?
Right.
Anyway, we need to vote on that budget. And at this time, I move that we approve it. And then if there's a second, we can discuss it.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a second. Okay, any discussions on the budget? Greg?
Okay, like our administrative budget, the foundation budget was something that was quite a bit of a concern. Our super duper 4 guys that have been running our kettle corn, because of them, that's the only income our club has gotten or will be getting for some time. The budget that we proposed, our budget committee, of course the executive board, decided to put this one forward. You can see there's a lot of different things that are not covered in the budget as far as expenditures. After the first of the year, we'll have a better understanding as to where the club will be financially. And at that time, we'll review the budget and figure out how much money we need to draw out of our savings to add those different items back in. Now, with that in mind, does anybody have any questions about the budget that Cindy put in the bulletin for us? If not, I'd like Darlene to call for the question.
Okay, Cindy Fickett, would you repeat the motion?
I guess to approve the 2020-21 budget for the Lions Pioneer Club.
Second by.
And seconded by Leroy. All those in favor, say aye. Or wave. Yeah, it looks like it is approved. And we will, revert back and look at it again in January when everything kind of settles down, and maybe we'll be able to do it. Yes, sir.
What that'll do is it'll enable Dolly to pay the club bills too.
Okay, all right. So, and now if you want to work on Friday or Saturday, make sure you get a hold of Lloyd to let him know. And Cindy Fickett, you have a question?
I do. I'm sorry. Who is Fire? I see the eyes, but I don't know.
I think it's Marge. Marge Whitton? Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I think Dina.
I'm here.
Do you want to have an awards meeting afterwards today?
Please, if those the award committee can stick around, I would appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So, anything else?
Jane.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Jane needs to stay around so they can have the meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Leroy?
Just a reminder, next Tuesday we were thinking about having the annual awards awarded. And I just found out today I've got to go down to OSHU on next Tuesday, so we're going to do that at another date. I'm sorry.
Question?
Yes, Case. Russ Case.
Yes, I missed Mr. Firth's comments about the budget, and I just wanted a real quick answer to why the reduction from $100 to $70.
Oh, Russ, our administrative budget is, to be quite frank, is flush at this time. And part of our dues goes into our budget to run the club. Because we're not making very many expenditures because of this coronavirus and not having much activity, decided to pull the dues back for this one time. Just get back and expand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else have any other comments? Okay, I'm going to then adjourn this meeting at 12:55 and stay on if you're on the awards committee.